and a very warm welcome to a brand new edition of World Panorama with me, Frank Pereira, on Rajya Sabha Television. Over the next half an hour, we'll bring you a roundup of all the significant events to have happened around the world this week. But first, a look at the headlines. Donald Trump accepts nomination to be the presidential candidate of the Republican Party. 70-year-old business tycoon promises a better and safer America, says his presidency will put America and ordinary people first. Gunman kills 9 people and injures at least 10 others at a busy area in Munich. German police give a cautious all-clear after finding the gunman dead a kilometer away from the crime scene. Turkey declares 3-month state of emergency after failed coup attempt. President Erdogan says emergency is to remove threat to democracy. Purge continues as thousands detained or sacked from their positions. Court of Arbitration in Sport deals a big blow to Russia, upholds Rio Olympics ban on 68 athletes. Russia says decision violates rights of clean sports people. IOC to take a final call on Sunday. Our top focus on World Panorama this week. Donald Trump formally accepted the Republican nomination for president on Thursday night, giving the biggest speech of his short political career, seeking to end a troubled, fractious GOP convention on a high note. Trump was introduced by his daughter Ivanka Trump to deliver his acceptance speech. He vowed as president to confront and repel the multiple threats facing the United States. Here's a detailed report.
Together, we will lead our party back to the White House, and we will lead our country back to safety, prosperity, and peace.
With the promise of a better and safer America, Donald Trump accepted the Republican presidential nomination. The 70-year-old business tycoon said his presidency would usher in a new era, putting America and ordinary people first. Referring to the recent attacks, Trump said that restoring law and order in the country was his priority.
Americans watching this address tonight have seen the recent images of violence in our streets and the chaos in our communities. Many have witnessed this violence personally. Some have even been its victims. I have a message for all of you. The crime and violence that today afflicts our nation will soon, and I mean very soon, come to an end.
Trump also promised to defeat the terrorist group Islamic State and vowed to protect the LGBT community. He also reiterated his stand of stopping illegal immigration as he accused immigrants of taking jobs from American citizens and committing crimes.
We are going to build a great border wall to stop illegal immigration, to stop the gangs and the violence, and to stop the drugs from pouring into our communities.
Trump, who spoke for over an hour, also lashed out at the Obama administration and attacked his Democratic rival Hillary Clinton for making the situation in America worse. He said Clinton's email controversy was a corruption scandal never seen before.
America is far less safe, and the world is far less stable than when Obama made the decision to put Hillary Clinton in charge of America's foreign policy. But Hillary Clinton's legacy does not have to be America's legacy. The problems we face now, poverty and violence at home, war and destruction abroad, will last only as long as we continue relying on the same politicians who created them in the first place.
The acceptance speech by Trump closed out the 4-day convention that underscored his struggle to heal fissures in the Republican Party. The event was boycotted by many a big name, including 2012 nominee Mitt Romney and members of the Bush family that gave the party its last 2 presidents. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, joining me for a chat to talk about this is Professor K.P. Vijayalakshmi, School of American Studies, JNU. Welcome, Professor. Thank you for joining me on the program. You know, Trump took to the stage yesterday, on Thursday night rather, here in India. It was on Friday. But then he took to the stage and then there was a lot of ambiguity about, what's going to happen to the Republican Party. Is Trump going to deliver? What kind of speech is he going to deliver? And the convention itself saw a lot of chaos. The lead up to Donald Trump's speech saw quite a few controversies.
That's right. But to be frank, he has been planning this moment for a while. If you look at his profile, he has written a couple of books in 2000 and 2010, The America We Deserve and It's Time to Get Tough. So you can see from these two titles itself how he's been growing. And he's given several speeches. And through the primaries, he's been making his positions fairly clear on a number of foreign policy as well as domestic issues. But this was a moment that he had to not only become the nominee, because till now he was only the presumptive nominee, he had to take on the mantle of unifying the party behind him. And I would say he had mixed success. But for first, I think the convention itself, which was expected to be very, very difficult, or, there were, issues, people worried about how it was going to go, the first ballot, etc. They have some procedural. They thought there was going to be a no-Trump delegation, yes, etc. Some delegations, I'm told, actually walked out, like Utah. But the fact is, it went off very well. And his job was to deliver a message that not only was he strong on all the issues that he's been talking about, but also a time to attack the opposition or the other candidate and set the tone for general elections.
He did that, didn't he?
Yes,
he took the attack right to Hillary Clinton, and he did not let a moment go by where he could not attack Hillary Clinton.
Because he was
right
talking,
from the emails, right from when she was, Secretary of State, and talking about how she's, synonymous with destruction and terror.
Destruction, death and terror. But that was, all the hyperboles, which we all know. Campaigns are made of rhetoric and not truth sometimes. And in this case, very clearly he was saying things which was not even Hillary's fault, or, his own party, President Bush, 43rd, not the 41st, but even 43rd, regime change. He attacked so many things. But the main message was to unify the party. That was the first task. The other things naturally follows.
Was he successful in unifying the party? Do you think unifying the party is one aspect of it, but unifying the voter base back home who will come out and vote in November is another thing, isn't it?
Yes, but first you need to have and make sure of your support base from your party. That's always the first task of any politician. So some of the messages and some of the rhetoric, I would say, is very attractive to a Republican audience. Instant polls after the convention, normally you get a bounce. And he got a bounce. 67% earlier had said they would vote for him. This is the Republicans or people who are already tuning into these messages and they are predisposed or favorably disposed. Having said that, 76% then said they would vote for him. So in that sense, he has energized a number of perhaps doubting Thomases within the Republican base. That's about the voters. But in terms of what we hear about the bigwigs of the party itself, notable absentees have created a flutter. Some of them are John McCain, for example, and Bush and Mitt Romney.
Yes.
These are big names. And perhaps, one would have to see whether they will, in fact, allow any kind of personal feelings to stand in the way of a Republican victory.
Indeed.
Because I don't think that's a test. That's a real serious test. But the issue he brought up, his messages were very clearly at all the support bases that we've heard about for the Republicans. You have the evangelicals, you have on crime. This is the domestic policy. I'm not talking about the foreign policy where he's made so many statements and policy views that he's made them known. We'll have to see. And I can tell you some of them really need to be really checked up.
Yes.
Okay? But in terms of domestic policy, he has been very attentive to the ongoing violence on the streets and the crimes, etc. And he's taking a position.
You know, he said he's the law and order candidate, but he's not spelt out how he's going to bring about law and order in the United States. That's a major criticism as far as his speech is concerned.
Yes, and the reason is, I think he is responding to the event, but his message is slanted for the Republican base. That's the way to look at it. You see, he is a tremendous businessman. And he has said in the past that I'm a deal maker. I know when to push forward. I know when to retreat. I know when to be silent, and you have to be secretive, etc. You know, many things about him now. If you put it together, you get a picture, very clear picture indeed, of a very serious candidate to the American presidency and the race to the White House. Indeed. But I think it would be interesting to see whether he can actually manage. I mentioned evangelicals because that was seen as Senator Ted Cruz's base, and you know what Senator Cruz actually said.
Yes.
And while the main Republicans did feel that this was not sportsmanlike, this was not the done thing. I mean, one doesn't lose and come and, you know, make these kind of speeches. It also shows that there is a section of Republicans who still need to be convinced that this is their candidate. And that is where I think his challenge lies within the party. And of course, in the general elections, he will be facing a formidable array of democratic messages as well as positions. And, you know, they have been in office, so therefore they have a stronger record. I mean, they have to, you know, sort of defend their record much more strongly. He can put out a number of points and policy views because he has never held government office. But,
Indeed.
You know, so there is that. But 26% of the voters within the Republicans themselves in the Insta polls are still not convinced. And I think that challenge also is something waiting for him to overcome. But overall, I would say he has delivered a speech which is very different from the ones we saw during the primaries. And therefore,
Indeed.
We are going to see more of this in the campaign to come.
You know, Professor, we'll have to leave it at that, but because we've run out of time. But indeed, challenges abound. We'll have to see how Donald Trump, tackles them. And a similar convention will be held by the Democratic Party next week. We'll have to keep a close eye on that as well. Thank you so much for joining us on the program and putting things into perspective for us.
Thank you.
Well, moving on now, Turkey's president has declared a 3-month state of emergency that gives the state extra powers to pass laws. The declaration follows the firing and suspension of tens of thousands of soldiers, educators and civil servants in recent days on suspicion of being involved in the failed coup last week. Turkey also formally requested the extradition of alleged mastermind Fethullah Gulen from the United States. Here's more.
Fallout of a failed coup continues. A state of emergency has been declared in Turkey for 3 months. President Recep Erdogan met with his National Security Council and the Council of Ministers on Wednesday, who approved the state of emergency recommendation. Erdogan vowed that all the viruses within the armed forces will be cleansed.
We decided to recommend to the government that a state of emergency be declared as per Article 120 of our Constitution. This is not against democracy, the rule of law and freedoms, but strengthening and protecting these values.
The declaration could be used to extend the detention of people rounded up since the failed coup. Turkey has now fired or suspended about 50,000 people as it intensifies its vast purge. Military men, journalists, police and judges alike have been caught in a net, with more than 9,400 people being detained. Education Ministry staff has been sacked, teachers' licenses withdrawn and the university deans told to quit. Amid talk of reviving the death penalty and heavy-handed punishments over the coup, Western leaders have urged Erdogan to respect democratic principles and act within the law.
That there are serious concerns, that we also want to send a strong message on the need to respect the rule of law in Turkey. I think that is important. Turkey is a partner of us, and we are working together in a community of values, and it's important that they are respected.
Thousands of people were suspended and fired among soldiers and judges. This makes us concerned. A political and legal processing of this coup must occur, but we must have the rule of law prevail.
sondern jetzt auch Universitätsprofessoren an ihrer Ausreise gehindert werden.
Erdogan has blamed the coup attempt on US-based cleric Fethullah Gulen. He has called for Gulen to be extradited to Turkey, but US insists on hard evidence first. The Muslim cleric has denied any involvement in the coup attempt.
They have apparently submitted something that is accurate, but in my comments directly to the Foreign Minister of Turkey, and we talked about 4 times in the span of 36 hours, I said, please don't send us allegations, send us evidence. We need to have evidence which we can then make a judgment about.
The announcement of emergency in the country has raised further concerns about restrictions on freedoms and rights in Turkey, which was shaken by a coup attempt on Friday that saw tanks enter the streets of Ankara and Istanbul and very nearly ousted the Turkish government. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, it's time for a short break now, but still to come. Another deadly attack in Europe rocks the world. Lone gunman goes on a rampage, killing 9 people, including children, in a busy area. Details on the other side. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching Rajya Sabha Television. Well, 9 people were killed and 10 others wounded after a man went on a shooting spree in Munich. The attacker then committed suicide. There was no immediate claim of responsibility and information about the possible motives, but the attacker was identified as an 18-year-old German of Iranian descent. Chancellor Angela Merkel convened her Security Council to address the deadly shooting rampage.
At least 9 people were killed in a shooting rampage in a Munich shopping centre on Friday, with police describing it as a suspected terror attack. The shooter, who was likely acting alone, committed suicide. Police say the gunman on the rampage shot himself in the head and died. The body of the suspect was found about 1 kilometre from the shopping centre in the Moosach district. The motive for the attack, in which 10 people were wounded, is unclear.
We are proceeding on the assumption of a terror attack in terms of the fact that we are responding with intense efforts and extensive measures.
The shooting spree began at around 6 p.m. local time near Hanover Street, with the attacker opening fire on the members of the public. This then progressed to Ries Street and the Olympia shopping centre. Following the attack, the Bavarian capital's transport system was suspended and the central railway station evacuated. Public transport was reopened several hours later when police gave a cautious all clear. Thousands of people stranded by the emergency and unable to get home were offered shelter by local residents. US and UK and other countries pledged their support for Germany after the attack. The Indian consulate in Munich also put out an advisory and helpline numbers so that Indians could report their safety.
Obviously, our hearts go out to those who may have been injured. It's still an active situation, and Germany is one of our closest allies, so we are going to pledge all the support that they may need in dealing with these circumstances.
Our thoughts are very much with the victims, their families, with the people of Munich and Germany more widely. If it seems very likely this is another terrorist incident, then I think it proves once again that we have a global phenomenon now and a global sickness that we have to tackle both at source in the areas where the cancer is being incubated in the Middle East, but also, of course, around the world.
This is the third strike against civilian targets in Europe in just over a week and follows an axe rampage by a teenager on a train in the same German state of Bavaria on Monday and the truck attack in the French city of Nice on 14th of July. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, much else has unfolded around the world this week. Here's a roundup of the other international news of the week in Globe Watch.
French lawmakers voted massively on Wednesday to extend a state of emergency as President François Hollande said that a call to boost reserve forces had paved the way towards a national guard. After 7 hours of fraught debate into the night, during which the opposition accused the government of being lax on security, the lower house of parliament voted by 489 to 26 to prolong the state of emergency for a further 6 months. Interior Minister Thomas de Maizière has warned that Germans should be prepared for further attacks carried out by small groups and radicalized lone wolves. 5 people were wounded, 2 critically, by a 17-year-old who went on a rampage on a train in the southern state of Bavaria on Monday. The attacker, who arrived in Germany in 2015 as an unaccompanied migrant, was shot dead holding an axe and a knife. A video emerged in which he said he was a soldier of the so-called Islamic State. Kick-Ass Torrents, the world's top website for illegally sharing movies, TV shows and music, has been taken down by the US government. The website's alleged owner, Artem Volin, a 30-year-old Ukrainian man, was arrested in Poland on Wednesday. The international burst is a massive blow to the online torrent community, where millions of people share copyrighted material without paying for it. Governments have been pressured in recent years by entertainment giants to crack down on digital piracy.
Well, let's shift gears now and bring you up to speed with some sports news. The Court of Arbitration for Sport said it had rejected Russia's appeal against the exclusion of its track and field athletes from the Rio Games starting on August 5th. The ruling by the CAS Sport's highest tribunal will be taken into consideration by the International Olympic Committee as it ponders whether to impose a blanket ban on Russia from all sports. Russian track and field athletes will remain banned from the Olympics following claims the country ran a state-sponsored doping program. The Russian Olympic Committee (ROC) and 68 Russian athletes attempted to overturn the suspension implemented by the body that governs world athletics. But the Court of Arbitration for Sport (CAS) has ruled it can stand.
The Court of Arbitration for Sport has dismissed the request filed by the Russian Olympic Committee and 68 Russian athletes.
The affair has triggered a crisis in world sport, with Russian President Vladimir Putin speaking of the risk of a split in the Olympic movement.
In general, unfortunately, we have to acknowledge that the court made the decision. I think this decision, of course, violates the rights of clean and honest sports people and, of course, creates a precedent of collective responsibility. I'm suffering for the mistakes of someone whom I do not even know. It turns out that the presumption of innocence is violated. I'm accused and I have to prove that I'm innocent. I think this is unfair.
Non-Russian athletes hailed the decision of the court and said that it is good for authorities to send a strong message against doping.
For me, if you have the proof and you catch somebody, I definitely feel that you should take action. And if you feel like banning the whole team is the right action, then I'm all for it, you know what I mean? Because as I said, rules are rules, and the doping violation in track and field is getting really bad. So if you feel like you need to make a statement, and this is how you feel like you need to make a statement, then.
I find it okay to leave them out. I mean, it can no longer be denied it was state-related anymore and that it was a whole system. The position I defend might be hard for the athletes to understand, but it is important to send a signal so that it does not happen anymore.
Russia was suspended from track and field events by the IAAF in November 2015 following the publication of an independent World Anti-Doping Agency report that showed a culture of widespread state-sponsored doping. Sports Minister Vitaly Mutko apologized for Russia's failure to catch the cheats but stopped short of admitting the scandal had been state-sponsored. However, another WADA commissioned report delivered earlier this week, the McLaren report, contained more damaging allegations and suggested senior figures in Russia's sports ministry were complicit in an organized cover-up. Following Monday's publication of the McLaren report, the IOC faced calls to ban all Russian competitors from the 2016 Olympics and will hold a second emergency meeting on Sunday to decide its course of action.
At the moment, I understand that the Russian Olympic Committee has selected athletes, including these 68 athletes for track and field events. So now it is for the International Olympic Committee to determine if these athletes can be confirmed or not. In the opinion of CAS, because the National Federation, Russia Athletics Federation, is suspended, normally these athletes should not compete in Rio. But again, IOC was not a party to this arbitration, so our decision is not binding on the IOC.
Even if the IOC bans the athletes, some of them could compete in Rio as neutrals if they meet a number of criteria, including being repeatedly tested outside their homeland. At least two 800 meters runner and doping whistleblower Yulia Stepanova and US-based long jumper Daria Klishina have gone down that path. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha Television. Well, let's now bring you some more sports news that you might have missed this week in our segment Sports Action. Brazilian police have arrested 10 members of a group alleged to be preparing acts of terrorism 2 weeks before the start of the Olympic Games. They were not members of Islamic State but had tried to make contact with the group. Brazil's Justice Minister said that the group was in the planning stage of an attack and police acted as a preventive measure. He described the cell as absolute amateurs and ill-prepared to launch an attack. All those arrested were Brazilian and 2 more suspects were being sought. South African prosecutors said that they will appeal against Oscar Pistorius' 6-year sentence for murder, calling it shockingly too lenient. The National Prosecuting Authority said that the sentence was disproportionate to the crime and could bring the justice system into disrepute. The Olympic athlete was jailed earlier this month for murdering his girlfriend Reeva Steenkamp in 2013. He admits killing her but says he mistook her for an intruder. The 29-year-old was initially given a 5-year term for manslaughter but was found guilty of murder on appeal last December. 17-time Grand Slam champion Roger Federer will compete in the Hopman Cup in Perth next year. Federer will represent Switzerland in the mixed teams event, which begins at Perth Arena in January. Federer last competed at the Hopman Cup in 2002 with his now wife Mirka after winning the event as a 19-year-old in 2001 with Martina Hingis. His playing partner will be world number 16 Belinda Bencic. The Hopman Cup will begin on January 1st and end on January 7th. And finally, as hundreds of thousands of tourists begin descending on Rio de Janeiro for the Olympics that start on August 5th, the headlines have focused on the street violence, the Zika virus, the water pollution and rush to finish venues and transport. But Rio, known by Brazilians as the marvelous city, glistens despite it all. I'm going to leave you today with visuals from Rio as the sun, sand and the surf offer a stunning backdrop to the Olympics.